Hello, 8th grade class. This is Mr. Campbell, coming to you with another exciting lesson today. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and get out your notebooks and turn to a clean sheet. Name today's date. The objective today is I can define, evaluate, and estimate square roots. Now, before we left for our long break, we were talking about square roots. Today, we're going to scale it back a little bit and focus in on the key details with looking at evaluating, defining, and estimating square roots. So let's say, for example, I have a square. Now, what do we know about a square? That's correct. A square has four sides which are the same. That is correct. So let's say, hypothetically, that I knew that this square was 16 inches square. The entire area of this square was 16 inches squared. And I wanted to figure out the measurement of each side of this equation. Now I could go about this two ways. I could figure out what two numbers multiply to get 16, or, because we're in 8th grade now, let's look at it from a different point of view. And let's look at it as square roots. Now on your calculators, I have talked to you guys about how to use square root and how to use that square root button. But, for the sake of this problem, let's go ahead and use that button to figure out what x is going to be for my square here. If I were to say, take the square root of my answer of 16, the square root of 16 would be, if we were to plug this in, yes, it would be 4. Now, 16 is a great number because it's what's known as a perfect square. A perfect square is a number that can be taken square root wise to end up with a whole number. Many times when you do a square root, you will not end up with a whole number. You will end up with a decimal many times. So let's look at another problem. Let's say I have the number, say I have the number 25 centimeters squared. And I still want to figure out what x was for all my four sides of my square. So I could take the square root of 25, which would end up being a whole number of 5. Because again, 25 is a perfect square. But let's say I had a different number. Let's say I had the number 48. 48 centimeters squared. Now 48 is not a perfect square. So if I plug in 48 into my equation here, I will have to take, so 48 square root ends up giving me this decimal, 6.928. Now, it goes on a lot longer than that, but for right now, all I'm going to worry about are those three numbers. Now, for the sake of your square roots, let's say for Mr. Campbell, we round to the nearest tenth. Now, as we talked about before, the 9 is in the tenths place. The number next to the 9 is 2, so as I talked about before, 5 or more, you raise the score. 4 or less, you leave it a mess. The 2 is going to keep that 9 the same, so the answer would be 6.9 centimeters for every single side of this square. What would I do in this problem? Well, I would take 20 to figure out x, and I would do the square root. So the square root of 20 is not a perfect square, so it's not going to give me a whole number. So I get 4.472, and if I round it to the nearest tenth, now this 7 is going to raise my 4, so I get 4.5 inches for every single x in my square. Okay? Alrighty. Your homework assignment will be posted in Google Classroom. It'll be 8 to 6 questions revolving around this topic. Now, I know for some, this may seem very easy. Like, Mr. Campbell, why are we starting off this easy? And the point I'm trying to make here is that we are going to be delving into more complex parts of this, dealing with Pythagorean theorem, with volume, with area, everything that I had originally planned for us to do. So, go ahead, let's take our exit slip now, please. Go ahead and tell me if I have a square, and again, the reason we know it's a square is that all 4 sides have the same bar between them. If I have 40 centimeters squared, what is the value of every single side of this square? Okay, let's go ahead and solve this, shall we? The square root of 40 is very easy. All you got to do is take a calculator. So 40 square root would give me the value of 6.324. And if we round to the nearest tenth, 3 is in the tenths place, and next to that 3 is the number 2. 5 or more raise the score. 4 or less, you leave it a mess. So our answer would end up being 6.3 centimeters. Thank you for joining me on this lesson today. Next time, we're going to be looking more at square roots and delving more into irrational numbers. Thank you so much.